Welcome, everyone. I'm back here again with the partners at Cogent Growth Partners. Really excited today to have all three of them here at the same time. It's going to be fantastic. Something magical about having everyone here at the same time. Joined by Rick Murphy, Bruce Teichman, and George Sergio. And yeah, super excited to have all three of them here today. We're talking about a topic that was hot in our travels this fall to all the different MSP events that we've all been to, which was not necessarily MSPs looking to sell themselves, but MSPs who were acquisitive, MSPs who were looking to acquire other MSPs. Um, and there's a whole range of topics that we could cover along these lines, and we could probably be here for 4 or 5 or 6 hours talking about it, but we're going to try to keep it today to 15 to 20 minutes. We'll see if we can do that for you guys. So let's start out with Rick. Rick, I don't know, do you have any thoughts off the top of your head? Are you seeing this trend in the marketplace with more MSPs looking to acquire other MSPs?
It's a growing trend, actually. We've been seeing it for the last few years. More and more people that are coming to the trade shows, the ConnectWise, Kaseya trade shows, DattoCon, all the IT by design, so forth. They are the MSSP show I saw you at, actually. Um, More and more companies want to be buyers. They see that there's benefit to it and growing more swiftly, um, growing your team more swiftly, growing sales more swiftly, and also they're looking to potentially someday exit or have their own liquidity moment where they have a liquidity event for themselves, and it's a good way to build value as long as you do it right. And again, we could go on for days, but I'll just fire that off first. And George, what do you think about that?
I couldn't say that I agree anymore. That's been a huge topic for years, like you said. We have people coming to us all the time asking about how they can buy other companies. It's certainly it's a great way to do business. I mean, it can't replace organic growth to do this inorganic growth. That's part of the big problem is people think, well, I don't have to worry about building a sales team because I'm just going to go buy other companies. That's probably not a good way to look at it. We've been teaching that. Actually, last time I saw Jessica, I was literally talking about that on stage at the DataCon show. So it's a part of a growth plan, but it's not the only piece. And that's probably one of the bigger mistakes, Jessica, that we usually see is somebody thinking that I'm not going to do the really hard job of setting up an organic growth system and I'm just going to go buy other companies. And it really is not set
Right,
up to
just
do
kind
You
of
have to have
cover up
both.
the operational inefficiencies of your own business by buying somebody else.
correct.
Not a
Well,
good idea.
that's a good start. Bruce, you could talk about that. I mean, in terms of buyers, you're looking at are you a good are you should you be a buyer? How about that?
Oh, nice one. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Well, as you know, obviously we're believers in the acquired growth strategy. That's why we exist. But it's not for everyone, right? So what I think last time our topic was what makes someone a quality MSP, and this is kind of, hey, what makes someone a quality buyer, or at least a buyer, right? And to your point, Jessica, I think everyone wants to, right? Hey, this is a good idea. Let's accelerate growth, but there's a bunch of things that are required. Some operational maturity, right? As you just sort of brought up, you're not going to necessarily fix your operation. In fact, you're probably, if it's not very mature, you could mess it up further, right? By suddenly bringing on some bulk number of employees and clients, and if you don't have the operational processes to sort of manage that. So I think some level of OML, as they call it, right, in the business, and it's not necessarily a size thing, right? It's just more of a sophistication. So there's that component of it. I mean, there's a bunch we'll talk about today. On size, you do have to be of a certain scale also to make it interesting, right? I mean, if you're only a $1 million business, and there's a lot of those guys who say, hey, I'd love to grow through acquisition, but they're not that attractive maybe to smaller MSPs. A lot of times, an MSP that they could afford to buy is just way too small, and their clients are too small. So there's this sort of fit thing. Uh, But at a certain point, you're there. One of the things that makes you a good buyer, besides the ability to afford to do a deal, right, which is sort of table stakes, I guess, is just actually things like having a good personality. you know, why would someone want to sell to you? And there are some great, mature, well-run MSPs that, hey, look, they're focused on the business, then maybe they're more technically oriented. So you need to be a good suitor, and that's the word that we use,
Interesting.
which, yeah, that's pretty nuanced, of course. And then back to being able to afford it. Well, that's a whole other, well, I'm sure we'll talk about a conversation because there's different ways
Well,
um,
to
to do
expand
that.
on that a little bit,
Yeah.
we talk about opportunity first, money last.
Mhm.
That is our motto here at Cogent. That's not necessarily everybody's model. A lot of people talk about money first. What's my multiple and what's my EBITDA and so forth. And they initiate conversations all around dollars and cents. You see that in the broker universe all the time. In our advisory universe, we're advising buyers all the time. And one thing we're telling both sides, we candidate companies and our buyer clients, is that you want to be able to be a good suitor and be desirable so that somebody wants to be part of your company. So you're just recruiting, new talent like you'd go to hire anybody. And why should they come to work for you? And it's the same thing about why should they sell to you? George, you could fill in on that a little bit more if you wanted.
Yeah, no, opportunity and fit first, money last. That's really what it comes down to. It honestly works in any industry. It's not really just ours, but it's certainly a Cogent thing that we've been teaching to our buyers, or when we're vetting them out. That's one of the things. If they can listen to that direction, great. If they can't, then we don't really take them on, because it's really paramount to the whole thing. You're not really going to figure out a deal at the end of the day if the opportunity and fit don't make sense to both parties.
So just to jump on that, so if there's a good fit, and the opportunities there, and everybody sees why we should put the companies together, it's pretty easy to figure out the money unless people are crazy. If everybody's like, hey, we should really do this, we should put these businesses together, this makes a lot of sense, here's how it makes sense. Well, again, if you can get there, then making the money work is a lot simpler. Not always be tried and true, but it's simpler to do if there's already a lot of love in the room.
Yeah.
Right, Bruce?
Yeah, no, I was going to say some of the, back to the why. Why are we doing this? And it's not just growth. Is perhaps, what's the strategy of the buyer? You have to sort of know why you want to do acquisition. It's just not, oh, I'll be bigger and I'll be worth more. That can't be the only reason. Maybe it's a talent thing. Hey, we, really need more security chops, or someone who's further adept with Azure. Or team that there's a little more cloud focus and things are going that way. You're kind of solving that problem. Often it's a geographic thing, just simply, hey, we actually now have some customers in this neighboring state, but we don't really have a presence. That might be a big driver for acquiring that rather than just starting from scratch. With the hiring employees. So it could be geographically driven. As I said, sort of the capabilities. Sometimes it's a vertical market that, hey, we need to get more focused, or we have a gap in supporting a particular vertical kind of industry that we do a little bit of, and so we want to shore that up, and we want to do that through acquisition. So figuring out the strategy from who they are, and then certainly again back to your size, a little bit about how big are they? What can you and can't you do?
Why do you want to buy? Except of course you want to be worth more later someday. Yep. But why do you want to buy really? I mean, that's an important question to be able to ask yourself. We certainly ask that question when we take on new clients, and it helps us communicate also with the candidate companies that are, basically M&A curious. They're interested in what's going on in the universe, and they're trying to look for opportunities. And is there a good opportunity to hitch my wagon to somebody else's wagon train and be part of their family? But most of the deals we do are talent acquisitions. A lot of people you think about, they call it, I'm going to buy a book of business. And the book of business isn't really what happens. It's really buying talent and everything that comes with it. The technicians and everybody that services the customers, customer fit, and so forth. George, you can speak to the buy a book of business thing. I mean, it's just not what we do.
No, that doesn't work. That's very small deal minded type stuff. And you're usually, not doing a great job of matching up what your company does with what they do. So, I mean, for years, nothing's changed, Jessica, in the fact that sometimes people don't get the fact that you have to match these things up. And just because I can afford something doesn't mean it's a good idea to do it. So if you've worked hard to be a 25 to 100 user type of service provider, why would you want to go buy something that maybe their biggest customer is 25 users and everybody is less than that? You're going backwards. So like Bruce was mentioning before, it's a go forward type of thing, or at least get better at what you're doing type of thing. You certainly don't want it to make you go backwards. That's back to an operational maturity type of thing. And can I really do that? Even what Bruce said about, geography being one of those things. I mean, that's also not for everybody. That might be a great plan, but if you don't have the scale in your company and the processes and the ability to go outside of that box where it's not that close to you anymore, it's going to cost more money, and it's going to cost a lot more time to pay attention to that stuff, and maybe not the best.
And harder to integrate.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing is, there are good reasons like geographic expansion and talent acquisition, but you want the companies to be aligned. You don't want them to be
Yeah.
different, hugely different sizes. You don't want them to have different cultures. You want them to be sort of
Well, let's go at
focused
one
in
thing
the
that's
same
really
direction.
important. Let's go at one thing that's really important: customer size, right? So if you've got a company that their average customer is $4,000 a month, round number, they have some smaller customers, they probably have some bigger customers, but they're looking to acquire a company, and the company that they're looking to acquire, when they talk to them, their average customer size is $1,000 a month, or a bunch of their customers, are $1,000 and lower, and only maybe 10 or 20% of the customers are, above $1,000 a month. Well, that's not going to be a good fit. The technicians from each side aren't going to know how to work with each other. They're not going to know how to service the customers well, and that's going to be really hard to integrate.
Yeah.
So you got to think about those things when you're looking at a company. And we try to pre-qualify companies when we introduce companies to each other. That's a big thing we do every day. But we run into those things all the time, and it's something we've learned over the years. And we learn from what our clients' experiences are, and we learn from things that have worked well and things that don't work well. One of them is getting that customer fit size-wise to fit really good. It can still be complementary. Doesn't have to be a doppelganger business, which some people expect that's going to be the truth. And they shop so much, and they're so adamant about it being an exact fit. That's a bad idea too. There's going to be hair on it. It's not going to be a perfect fit, right? And you got to be able to get used to that. And it's just the people that do that are the more successful ones.
The Venn diagram, right? Most
ahead, Bruce.
overlap, and then sometimes a little, outside of that. But you shouldn't be. I think a VAR deciding they want to buy an MSP, or an MSP deciding they want to buy a Salesforce integration firm. I mean, you kind of stick to what you know by and large, and maybe they have some. We've seen a lot of businesses where they do some web development or some other type dev, and that's okay.
Well, that's happening in cyber now, right? I mean, there's more MSPs that are trying to sell cyber services. They're selling third-party services. They don't have the chops, the technology or whatever as part of their company already. Hey, can we find somebody that we could buy that could bring that skill set to our company? Because we think we know how to
service
sell.
the same kind of clients as well. So that back to but they also have to be able to service the types of clients. So you're buying the new experience for your clientele that you don't have, that piece that you don't have, and you're trying to add that versus starting it from scratch. Makes perfect sense, but you still don't want to buy a security oriented company that services clients that have nothing to do with your client base already. It might not be that great of an idea.
And when MSPs bring you these, I mean,
whoops.
Do they know what they're doing when they come to you?
Well,
guys?
I was about to go there.
My other question, like if they're that sophisticated enough to be thinking of acquisitions, are they the kind of quality MSP that is ready for doing that kind of deal? Or
not necessarily, right? Just because you're a good MSP or mature, and hey, and you can afford to do it, and you found your match and it looks good. Can you accomplish it? Is kind of really your question. And listen, if being an MSP is your day job, there's a lot you don't know. And so that's where we do have a lot of companies coming to us saying, hey, I already know who I want to join forces with, and we're a great fit, and we've sort of have similar customers, and we're in the same geo and all these reasons, but we don't actually know how to do it, right? How do you do it? So certainly that's where Cogent assists. And it's not just us as a third party. I mean, unless it's insourced, right? Unless you have an in-house M&A person, which you likely don't, then you're going to outsource it. And the same thing with attorneys. You know, you need a counsel that is M&A savvy, ideally has some knowledge of IT industry and IT services industry, sort of helpful, accountants and things like that. So you have to have a little bit of a team around you as well to be a good buyer. If you're going to just completely go, what's the term that we use when someone kind of goes solo?
Cowboy?
But cowboy,
Yeah.
yeah. People like to cowboy the deal, as we call
Yeah.
it, and it's hard to get that to the finish line. It really is. I mean, best of intentions.
And do you want to
Sure.
get it to the finish line, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's two parts to that, right? So you also have to be intelligent enough to pass. We get post LOI, post letter of intent with some guys, and then you start doing the due diligence, and the due diligence is going to uncover, should we still do this? And sometimes you find out maybe we shouldn't still do this, or things have to change that we might have already talked about that come up in due diligence. And some people think that's sort of sinister and that they do it on purpose, and that's really not true. They certainly are paying us money and counsel money, and the sellers are paying people money to help them, and so there's already money at stake to make that happen. But the idea is trying to do something that's going to be effective, right? We talk about that all the time. And just every time we talk to a new candidate company, we talk to our clients. It's how does the buyer run their company, and how much money do they make doing that? How does the seller run their company? How much money do they make doing that? And what are the company going to look like when you put them together? How much money is that company going to generate? And how much of that do you need to give to the seller to make them happy and want to do a deal? And how much does the buyer need to keep to make it a good business decision? And that's really where deals are born. There's a lot. You can say that really quickly, and it's the truth, but there's a lot that goes into
No,
that.
it sounds like there's a lot that goes into that. And I wonder, how many deals, make it from the LOI to being completed. I mean, and you don't have to answer that.
Well,
It's
I'm
probably
gonna
secret.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I'm gonna just add a little color. I was about to say, I
Go
was
ahead.
thinking, how you kind of don't go straight to marriage. There's an engagement period for a
Yeah.
reason,
There you go.
right? So we're big believers in that, and there are companies that are for sale or who they just want to kind of jump right into the okay, how do we get married? What's the size of the ring, right, so to speak? I go, hold on, step back. Let's do a little more getting to know each other, getting to dig a little bit into the details
We liken
before.
it to dating.
Yeah,
Just
it's
just go
very,
there.
very, very akin to dating and marriage and engagement, like I'm saying. And it's the idea of doing that is that when you do get to an LOI, that post LOI to completion, there's not a lot of brand new information. There's some validation, there's some sharpening of the pencil of items and things like that, not necessarily the price tag. But so that's where there's challenges. We see that if you're too quick to make these moves, or if you have limited information and you have an LOI, then it's a much less likelihood that it actually gets all the way. But if you've had sort of a proper engagement period and shared to the right level of detail and information, so that LOI is smart, like it already knew these things when it was presented. In our experience, we typically, and especially when we're controlling the process that we do, have a 90% plus close rate, 95 probably close ratio from after LOI.
Very
And
good.
again, as Bruce
After the
said, just to
dating is
reinforce, go ahead.
completed and everybody's okay with it. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you're dating pre-LOI, pre-letter of intent, and going through financials. We have a modeling process we go through, and a pre-LOI due diligence process. And the real trick there is so people get to know each other. So that they're worrying about and meeting each other and talking about operational fit and how do they sell this and tool sets and how are we going to do this and why does this make sense? And we're handling money and modeling and thinking about how the companies go together financially. What would the purchase price look at? What's the structure going to be? And then how do you do it on the other side of the lines, like getting all the paperwork done and all that stuff. That's what Cogent does for a living. We help everybody get through the process and get to a happy ending. And more importantly is being able to do the next one and properly the next one. Because we like serial acquirers. We try to help companies become serial acquirers. Some do multiple 3-4 deals a year. Some do a deal a year, deal every 2 years, just kind of depends. But if you can get good at it, it is a great way to grow the company. And you got to be pretty dedicated at what you need to do and what you're trying to accomplish. And it also grows and morphs over time. things change. We work on a mandate basis with our clients. So we try to understand what they want to do and what it would take to be a good, candidate company for them. And that's what we search for. And you're never quite sure it's a good fit till they all talk to each other and
Yeah.
then get that first date done. And is there going to be a second date? Go
I
ahead,
was going to
Bruce.
add one other thing that, what makes a good buyer is obviously, hey, they've done it before successfully is really helpful, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether
Eating
we were helping them or
chickens
whether
before you
they,
get
they
that entry level job. So
yeah,
yeah.
whether they did it some other way, it doesn't matter. But a little experience. Now, it doesn't have to be the case, but just from hey, the chances are they've gone through it. They've learned some lessons. They skinned their knees and they know how not to do that next time. Yeah, so that's a component as well.
Well, and you're not going to walk in the door knowing how to do that. I mean, we
Yeah.
coach, George, you can talk about, we coach people, all of our clients, virtually every client we have, even some of the larger ones, even the PE clients we have, aren't perfect at it. And we're not that we're perfect, but we've seen a lot of, we've done over 200 deals now and since 2010. So we've done a lot of, sorry, the phone's working.
It's hard.
Whoops.
Oh, good.
Away.
Can't hear it.
I don't know how to do that. Yeah, so it's just the idea of coaching and teaching people the things to do and learning ourselves from experience and what do we do differently next time, whether it's on the
Mhm.
same client or with a different client, things like that, right, George?
Yeah, and like Bruce said before, typically even our bigger buyers that we work with, they don't have somebody necessarily in house. It's one person, so you're pulling people off their day job and whatnot. So that's why we, kind of act as an M&A department, because there's a lot of parts and pieces of the whole thing, and it does come in handy. Like Bruce said, when the resume doesn't have the first job and you're just getting out of school, and so how do I get my first job to put it on the resume to get my first job? That's where getting help helps because you can lean on somebody that's done 200 deals or 10 or 20 or more than zero.
More than zero.
Yeah, that can say back to we're not cowboying anything, because you get in trouble real fast sometimes when you have two people or two entities that are negotiating something that they don't understand what they're negotiating. And then things go sour real fast. So that's the way to get out of that. Besides the fact that, whether people like it or not, we talked about, well, we didn't really talk about cost per se, but everything we were talking about has a dollar figure to it. So even if you're using your own internal people, you're pulling them off their day job. So they're not doing their other job. So either somebody else is filling in for them, working overtime, or you bring somebody else in. One way or another, all this stuff costs money in the matter of what can I do? What can my internal people do? What do I have to get external help on? And that doesn't just mean, attorneys. So the thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration is the fact that it's just not, oh, how am I going to get $2 million from the bank or $5 million or 500, whatever it is, to pay for the down payment or the full price tag of a deal. It's okay, I got to pay an accountant, a lawyer, my internal people, whoever else that I brought in to do this. So there's a lot more cost that's involved. And you need to understand it before you jump into that so you can cover all that, or else you're going to get caught in a weird spot when you're like, I might have just run out of money before I even did this deal. So there's a lot of things to think about before that, and not having somebody that does understand all these things involved and trying to do everything on your own is not a great idea. Just like what these MSPs themselves or MSSPs or any other IT companies trying to do is be the IT brain for their customers. Sometimes you need somebody else to be the M&A brain, to put out all these things that you might
Well, it's
miss.
like they sell VCIO services and have people that are specialists in doing what we do, mergers and acquisitions, and being able to coach buyers to be better buyers. It's selfish too. It's altruistic on the one hand, so they benefit from it, and everybody benefits. But from our perspective, it's also selfish. That's how we do our business too. So it works both ways.
I was just gonna expand on one thing I said earlier in terms of just having your strategy, knowing what you want to buy and why, and all these other things. But it really is beyond that. I mean, it is the full thesis. Where am I getting the money? What are the rules? If I'm using a bank, that's fine. Some people don't know that there's restrictions around owners continuing in the business on certain banking funded deals. Had no idea the owner couldn't come along, or that the structure, certain deal structures are on the table and certain are just off the table, depending on the sources of funds, right? So that has nothing to do with, hey, are we a match and should we do this, right? That has to get into a little bit of the mechanics of what can be done. Yeah.
Is that a good topic for a future session? I mean, do you think we could talk about that for a while, the different uh
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
there's a
financing
handful. Yeah,
options
there's
and
all of this stuff can be talked about
Oh
for
yeah.
hours.
Yeah. How to
As they
finance
say.
things, the deal structures that are available and not available, depending on how you're financing, all that. It's a complete topic and it's in
super
its own
interesting.
right.
Yeah.
We're running out of time here. I wonder if we could each if each of you guys could give me like one tip for acquisitive MSPs, like the biggest mistake they made or what they need to fix or, the thing they need to keep at the front of their minds.
I'll go first. I had one I was going to bring up. So you have to have your own financial house in order, right? The seller is, even if they're for sale and they're working with a broker and they're literally for sale, um, the idea that they're going to want reciprocal financials from you. Again, why are you a good acquirer? Having your own financial house in order, having your house in order so that you can show off and go here. When they say, let me see your financials, and you just go here, it's done. You don't have to go produce them. So that would be one of my pet things, and making sure that people that want to be a buyer actually have their own house in order.
Now, I'll jump in from that one. That comes back to what I was saying before is you need to really know what your options are and where you can go in terms of financing a deal, which comes back to if your house isn't in order and you think you're going to waltz into a bank, it's not going to happen. And not every bank wants to deal with the IT services space as much as we all love it, recurring revenue and whatnot. Some banks just, that's not for them. There's no hard assets or anything to deal with. It's all about people and talent and smarts. And we all love that, but they don't necessarily do it. So you need to have all that lined up as to, what your options are first.
Yeah, and I would add, we're talking about, how to get the M&A, kind of done, but really that's when the hard work begins, right, in terms of integration. So even before you're doing this as a buyer, you have to have your plan for how to integrate those customers and those tools and technologies and those employees into your business, meaning you probably need bandwidth and either a dedicated or part-time resource to do that. And to do what specifically? Where is the integration plan? And that you can't figure that out late. Oh, we'll figure out later how to do that after it closes. You gotta know that before.
For example, our pre-integration planning tool we can share with people has how many items in it? 320,
At
something
least,
like
yeah,
that.
hundreds of items.
So that's just the pre-integration planning tool.
There's a lot
Sounds,
from them.
yeah,
There's a lot to it.
yeah. It's like Thanksgiving. If you're hosting it, you can't keep it all in your head.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Good point.
But still a great way to grow. And obviously there's plenty of it happening.
We do that a lot.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys for talking about this topic. I think it's going to be of value to a lot of MSPs out there. Appreciate it. And we're looking forward to getting back together again next month.
Look
Well, that's
forward to it.
great,
Thanks so
Jessica.
much,
Thank you so
Jessica.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.